13 years ago, a computer science professor named Randy Pouch, who was a professor at the Carnegie Mellon University in America, ascended the lectern and delivered a talk to a packed auditorium. It was known as his last lecture. It was very common and is common practice among academics and professors that they would ascend a lectern and deliver the last lecture, figuratively speaking. They would ruminate over their demise and pontificate over what was important for them in their lives. They would think about the things that mattered to them, and they would deliver to their audience as though they were delivering their own eulogy. But as was known to the entire audience on that day, Professor Randy Pouch was indeed delivering his last lecture, not only hypothetically, but indeed literally. Only a few weeks earlier, he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a terminal illness, and tragically, a few months later, he was going to pass away, surrounded lovingly by his wife and children. At the end of his lecture, after sharing his values and the things that were important to him, he said to the audience, "I appreciate everyone being here today, but please know, I am not delivering this lecture for you. I am in fact delivering it for my children, then aged 6, 3, and 18 months. Those 3 little children would soon become fatherless. They would soon become orphaned." And this professor wanted to ensure that his thoughts and his parting message would be bottled up and been able to be preserved for his children forevermore. That any time in the future, now these children have grown to become young adults, that they at any time are able to look back at their father's lecture and to learn from it his legacy, the values that he bequeathed to them. Those important elements in life that were so critical and central and indispensable to him, and the ones that he wanted to pass down to his children and then intergenerationally into the future. Please God, every one of us should live a long, happy, and healthy life. But if there was ever a day in the year in our Jewish calendar that we should consider our own last lecture, that we should consider our own final sermon, it is Yom Kippur, the Holy Day of Atonement. Indeed, this Yom Kippur in particular, which will be commemorated and experienced in isolation, away from our friends, away from our community, each in our own home, in our own family, what better time is there to reflect over our final lecture, over our final sermon, over what's important to us in our lives, over what legacy we want to live for our children. I want to share a story that I heard about a great rabbi whose name was Rabbi Zusha from the town of Anipoli. Reb Zusha was highly respected, a beautiful man, incredibly pious, devout, and humble. He grew old, and he was lying on his deathbed. And as he was about to pass away, his students surrounded his bed, and they looked at him, and they could see that he looked fearful. He looked scared, he looked apprehensive and anxious. And they turned to their teacher and they said, "Rabbi Zusha, please tell us, what are you afraid of?" And Rabbi Zusha looked back at them and responded, "My dear students, before I tell you what I am afraid of, I want to tell you what I'm not afraid of. I'm not afraid that when I leave this world and return my soul to its maker, that the heavenly tribunal will stand before me and say, 'Reb Zusha, why were you not like Abraham our forefather? Why were you not like Isaac and Jacob? Why did you not reach the level and have the impact of King David or King Solomon? Why were you not like the Torah giants, Hillel and Shammai, Abaye and Rava in the Talmud?' That's not what I'm afraid of," Reb Zusha said to his dear students. "What I am afraid of," he said, "is that the heavenly tribunal will look me square in the eye and they'll say to me the one question I most dread, 'Reb Zusha, why were you not like Reb Zusha? Why were you not the best possible version of yourself that you could possibly be?' That is the question that I'm afraid of." Reb Zusha asked that question at the end of his life. Professor Randy Pouch was able to answer that question at the end of his life, tragically cut short. We need to ask that question to ourselves right here and right now. Am I the best version of the person that I can be? Are you the best version of the person that you can be? In biblical times, when Jacob went to sleep in the famous story, he had a dream. And in the dream, he saw a ladder, Sulam Mutzav Arza, a ladder whose legs were firmly in the ground. V'Rosh Magia Shemaima, but its head was up in the heavens. And in the dream he saw angels of God ascending and descending the ladder, up and down, up and down. Ask the Kabbalists, why were these angels going up and down? And they answer so simply yet so profoundly, that every single human being has two personas, two versions of themselves. There is the person that we can be and the person we actually are when we look in the mirror. Jacob had two personas. There was the person he could be, that is the one that's reflected at the top of the ladder in heaven. And then there is the way we are down here. For the vast majority of us, those two images, those two pictures are very, very different. How many of us truly reach our true potential? Jacob was one in a million who was able to truly do that. And so the angels ascended and saw a particular image of Jacob, and then they came down the ladder and they saw the same image. And they were astounded, up and down, the same image constantly. They couldn't understand how a human being of flesh and blood was able to reach their true potential, was able to really be the best version of themselves that they could be. We should all strive to be that Jacob. We should all try to be able to have that dream and see the best version of ourselves and reach for that dream and achieve that dream here in this world. We should try and achieve it before we reach our final lecture, our final sermon. We should be able to be not scared like Reb Zusha was, to be able to say that I was indeed the best version of who I am. But my friends, the only way to do that, the only way to answer that question on this holy and hallowed day of Yom Kippur is to be able to be deeply proud of who we are as Jews, to recognize that we live not as an isolated individual in a fragmented and uncaring world, but rather as a link within a long-standing chain, a link that links us to our predecessors and our ancestors, and one that will link us to future generations for many, many centuries to come. We need to recognize that as Jews, we have a mission and a mandate in this world. We need to be proud of who we are, inspired of who we are, and when we are inspired, then we will be able to inspire other people. If we are scared of our own shadows, or if we don't dream big enough, my friends, we will not be able to look our children in the eye and deliver the last lecture with sincerity and with our hand on our heart. This Yom Kippur, let us try and deliver our last lecture, figuratively speaking. Let us try and look ourselves in the mirror and say, I can be and am the best version of myself. Let us be able to pass to our children a clear message that the values that we hold dear to our heart, the values of our Judaism, the values of our Yiddishkeit, of our history, of our heritage, of our rituals, of the things that are so important to our being, those are things that we lived up to and things that we were able to bequeath to our next generation. Once again, let us all live long, happy, and healthy lives. Let us be blessed, written, and inscribed in the book, God's book of life. And let us be able to enjoy and relish our time here on this world. But let us also equally remember that we have not only privileges in this lifetime, but also responsibilities. Let us try and be like Jacob. Let us try and reach for the stars and to be able to hand a piece of eternity to our children by delivering to them a sincere and honest last lecture. I wish you all well over the fast and a Shana Tova.